Alright bro, it's T and I'm back with a new video, and this video today is on Jeremy Ethier, my friend. That's right, Jeremy Ethier. In this video he just posted, says how many sets you actually need to maximize growth. Alright, I want to know how many I want to know how many sets do I need to maximize growth, to grow muscles? How many of these how many times do I have to lift to make that muscle grow magically?
How many sets do you really need to build muscle? Some say just one set.
Well, I'm going to tell you off the bat, you don't need any sets to grow muscle. What you truly need is, but we'll still watch this video. This is from NCBI, PubMed. All right, resistance exercise, nutrition and protein synthesis. This small section, they actually highlight it for you, because they know that regular laymen are reading this. Skeletal muscle is continually breaking down and synthesizing protein. We know that throughout the day. And you can break down more protein actually than you're synthesizing sometimes, so you lose some mass. Depending, people that work in factories and things, sometimes they get skinny depending on how they're eating. Some people tend to get a little bit bigger because they're eating more protein. It depends on the food that they're eating. People who work labor jobs get this. And they tend to get bigger if they're working a labor job because they tend to be eating more protein. So they're synthesizing more than they're breaking down. In any job that you do, actually, and that's the truth. You don't need a gym to build muscle or mass on a, sorry. You don't need a gym to build mass on a muscle, but it can only go so far. If muscle is going to maintain its, you need to do something else very specific to exceed that limit of mass being built up on muscle. If muscle is going to maintain its mass, the net level, maintain its mass, the net level of protein balance must equal 0. If muscle is going to gain mass, protein synthesis must exceed protein breakdown. So listen to what they say. If muscle is going to gain any, and this is just mass, I'm not talking about density, just the mass, protein synthesis must exceed protein breakdown. Yeah. So I don't know what he's talking about. If you're going to build any, if muscle is going to gain any mass, protein synthesis must exceed protein breakdown. And yeah, I can scroll up to the top if you like. It's this section here, important skeletal muscle. It's from Nutrition and Muscle Protein Synthesis, a descriptive review. This is NCBI, National Library of Medicine. So yeah, you can check it out. So they're not lying. And that's just one of them. I could bring out several. Now let's finish this video.
Taken to all out failure is best, whereas others preach high volume, doing 4 to 5 sets per exercise and taking over 3 hours to complete a single workout. Who's right? And more importantly, how many sets should you do, especially as a natural? Well,
I personally think you should focus more on protein synthesis must exceed that breakdown in order to build any mass. But hey man, what do I know, right? I don't know anything. Jeremy Ethier, he's massive, he's huge, he's bigger than me. He knows everything. He uses such scientific studies to, like, breatharians. They breathe air and they live off air. Yeah.
the answer might surprise you, and is probably a lot less than you're currently doing. The first major analysis on how the number of sets you do affects muscle growth was done in 2017, led by researcher Brad Schoenfeld. They compared 1 to 5, 5 to 9, and 10 plus sets per muscle per week. So for example, 6 weekly sets for the chest could be 3 sets of bench and 3 sets of flies. Now what they discovered is a dose-response relationship between muscle growth and the number of sets performed, with 10 plus.
Again, you could build mass on your body without lifting any weights by eating tons of protein, because protein synthesis will exceed that breakdown because it's constantly breaking down and synthesizing during the day. You don't need a gym, but you'll reach a level where it won't be able to build any more mass.
Sets per muscle per week, resulting in the most growth. After this,
it also happens in a gym, so then you need to do something specific to increase the mass. And I could mention in this video, but it's not important.
analysis was published, pretty much all of us fitness nerds were under the impression that more volume was better. Almost instantly, I bumped up the number of sets on all my exercises. Unfortunately, it didn't end up skyrocketing my gains the way I hoped it would. It wasn't until more research came out did I realize.
Wow, it didn't skyrocket his gains by living off breatharian diet, the breatharian diet. Gee, I wonder why, man.
Realized the mistake I made. You see, while this analysis did suggest that more was better, it didn't let us know just how far we could push it while still continuing.
So let me get this straight. More is better, and you're going to get growth doing this by eating what? Your regular diet? Like breatharian diet? So you're a breatharian, and you're going to go and do all these sets and reps, and muscle is going to grow while you're on a breatharian diet? Yeah, I don't think so, man.
To see better gains. Fortunately, 6 years later, a new group of researchers decided to perform a similar analysis. This time, they compared
Have you ever seen how breatharians build muscle? Yeah.
lower volumes of less than 12 sets, moderate volumes of 12 to 20 sets, and high volumes of more than 20 sets per muscle per week. They also standardized the data by only looking at sets performed within 6 to 20 reps. The result? Well, although moderate and high volumes led to more growth compared to low volumes, in almost all the muscles measured, there were no significant differences between the two.
Really? Oh my God, they actually built muscle? Just moving a weight around built this muscle? It's incredible.
One exception was the triceps.
I had no idea that weights build muscle. I always thought protein synthesis needs to exceed that breakdown in order to build that mass on that muscle. I didn't know weights did it. That's incredible.
Responded better to higher volumes.
Me personally, I always thought weights broke down proteins and then you had to rebuild them. That's the whole point.
But we'll talk more about what this means later on. But overall, this analysis suggests...
The truth is, everybody in the gym, that's why all these natty people and everybody, they're all skating uphill. It's like pushing a boulder up the hill. You going to the gym and breaking down proteins, you're breaking down proteins faster than they could build up. And that's actually, now you're trying to go home, then you're like, okay, I'm going to eat a lot to try to build up these proteins, but you don't catch up because you cause too much of a breakdown. See what I mean? Yeah. Then there's artificial muscle growth. You could be coming to the gym and eating a lot of complex carbohydrates and just loading them in the muscle. They call that sarcoplasmic muscle, so it fools you. You're loading energy in the muscle. The muscle can load a ton of energy, man, in the form of glycogen. So that too, this muscle growth could be sarcoplasmic. I'm not really sure. I don't know what they're eating, what they're doing, what their diet is. It's really difficult to tell.
There may be some kind of upper limit where too much volume doesn't lead to more.
What is this muscle growth? Cytoplasm, sarcoplasm, protein? I don't know. What is this? I don't know what this growth is.
Growth, and in some cases might even hinder growth because of recovery issues. The sweet spot seems to be somewhere within the range of 10 to 20 sets.
It goes up and then it goes down? This is the sweet spot. Wow. Okay. Without any food, huh?
Per muscle per week. But this is still a very wide range.
And all this is being done without food on the breatharian diet? This is a miracle, man.
20 sets is double the time and work compared to 10 sets. To find where exactly...
Wow, so instead of doing 10, you're going to do 20. So you're going to break down more proteins and you're going to get more growth on a breatharian diet, on your regular diet.
Within this range is best for you, there's 5 other factors you need to consider. The first of which is your individual...
You know, when it comes to really high rep, it's very specific. If you are eating a herbivore diet, which is not your diet, but if you are eating complex carbohydrates and you're doing high repetitions, you're actually glycogen loading now. That's what you're doing, replacing it. Yeah, you're replacing this protein synthesis to break down
response. So the studies we covered earlier, while they do provide us with great insight, they look at averages to see what the best general recommendation is. But in the case of volume, it seems to be highly individual. Illustrating this is a 29...
See, high volume again. If it was to be high volume, you'd break down more proteins, then you would need even more food to catch up to the breakdown part, restore that which was broken down, and now you need to exceed that breakdown. That is incredibly a large amount of protein, believe me. That's why people get huge on herbivore diets because it fools them. They're getting sarcoplasmic muscle, fake muscles, because they're glycogen loading, man.
Study from the Journal of Sports Science, where they had 19 participants train one leg with 6 to 9 sets per week and their other leg with 15 sets per week. After 8 weeks, roughly a third of the participants had a leg that responded better from low volume, a third had a leg which responded better from high volumes, and a third had a similar response in both legs, suggesting that what one person can recover well and grow from may end up being too much for someone else. Now later in this video, I'll show you guys how to determine if what you're currently doing is too much or too little for you. But one thing that will play a big role in that is exercise execution. Max Uceda, a 22-year-old natural.
Yeah, I don't agree with any of this stuff. He hasn't really proved anything what this muscle is. You can't find out in a DEXA scan. You can't really distinguish between sarcoplasmic fluid and real muscle. It's really difficult.
Bodybuilder experienced this firsthand. It was
and if anything, doing higher repetitions like that crash your testosterone. Yeah, lifting weights crashes there's a temporary rise, but everybody knows, and people who lift weights, they know their testosterone's crashed. That's why they're all complaining going on TRT. They all check themselves. They go, I got low testosterone, because lifting weights decreases your testosterone. It crashes it.
Probably 30 to 40 sets per muscle group per week. For example, a chest day, I was doing every chest movement I could think of. Upper chest flies, incline bench press, flat bench press. All these sets were sloppy, and I wasn't actually taking the muscles.
I wasn't actually taking the muscles where?
To failure. I tell myself, all right, 30 reps of bicep curls, and I'll stop once I hit 30.
This is what I would call the slave mentality. The government has you, they put you on this. You need to exercise, you need to lift weights, build muscle, and in fact, you need food. People with money will build their bodies. They look massive. I know people that work in offices, man, they look huge. They eat real food. They don't eat the slave diet and then lift these slave weights all day. You understand me? If you eat a slave diet and lift these weights, well, you're definitely not going to build any muscle. But if you do very specific things and you eat a very good natural diet, you could build some muscle. It's very specific.
And in my last, I was just swinging up and down. It was a mess. Eventually I got to a point where months down the line, I just wasn't seeing any progress in terms of, my lifts weren't going up. I wasn't putting on any muscle. So now I'm doing anywhere from 7 to 12 sets.
Yeah, kind of like breatharian diet. If you're on a breatharian diet, yeah, kind of like you're not going to build any muscle, bro. Just lifting a bunch of iron off the floor. No factory worker either.
Per week, per muscle group, as opposed to, 30 plus. I've definitely seen the most growth I've ever seen in terms of, training, quote unquote, a lower.
Look, that's lower volume. That's the reason why people try to lift really heavy and they do 1 to 3 reps. 1 to 3 reps, there's not so much as a breakdown in protein synthesis. They're seeking the mass. But again, they're eating herbivore diet, so that's fooling them as well. But you could start adding more of this mass by lifting heavy, doing less repetitions. But that mass always wants to go back, it's homeostatic, it wants to go back to homeostasis. It's really difficult because throughout the day, it's like, man, again, it's like pushing a boulder up a hill. You're constantly skating uphill. Yeah. And you have to, the body's constantly breaking down and rebuilding these proteins throughout the day, even when you're not lifting. So, yeah, I don't know, man. This is complex. I prefer to build real muscle through causing micro injuries to the muscle and building it than doing all this stupid mass work.
Volume than normal, and the thing that really helped me do that is training very close to failure, because when you're training very close to failure, your muscles just won't need that many sets. But when that set gets hard, you need to maintain good form. If your form is breaking down to where you're using momentum and your reps are getting super sloppy, then you're not taking your muscles to failure. So the last thing I did when it comes to lowering my volume that really helped was taking longer rest periods.
Taking longer, yeah, you could take longer rest periods and do higher volume, but that's not going to build the muscle.
Because obviously, when you're training very hard and very intensely, your muscles just need to.
Listen, if you do very high volume again and you're eating this herbivore diet of sugar or whatever, complex carbs, you're going to create sarcoplasmic muscles. But if you do very low volume, but what I would call heavy lifting and low volume, that protein synthesis, what you're eating, if you are eating protein, will exceed that breakdown now. It's not the weight that's causing it. There's a disruption in the cell, but it really is because you guys start eating more because you're lifting. And so the guy who's burning out more of these proteins, he's going to end up smaller, if anything. And the guy who's doing less volume and heavier work is going to get bigger eating the same diet as this guy doing high volume. But then again, the guy who's doing high volume, if he tends to eat more carbohydrates, complex, he's going to get a lot more mass on his body. But that mass is going to be fake. That's the mass that bodybuilders chase. That's why they go, I gotta go to failure. You understand me? If anything, you could destroy your muscle and just get more fake muscles. And that doesn't add to the mass. That doesn't make you super strong.
Require more rest. I think when you maintain proper technique and you take your muscles to failure, then pair that with a lower volume approach, you're doing everything that you need to do without going overboard and creating all of this fatigue and creating all this muscle damage that needs to be recovered from. This allows them.
No, you're not creating any muscle damage or fatigue there, okay? Muscle damage only ever happens once, and it's really hard to get muscle damage in the muscles, to damage them. You're just breaking down proteins, if anything, and you're trying to load this glycogen in there. Yeah, that's what bodybuilders get. They get sarcoplasmic muscle, artificial muscle growth.
My own experience.
It's a type of artificial muscle growth just for the visual aspect of looking big and massive, walking around.
As well. Actually push yourself close to failure on all your sets while maintaining good form, and you'll get way more out of less. But Max.
No, you won't. I'm telling you, you'll get artificial muscle growth if you do that. If you do less volume, heavier lifts, you'll get more real muscle mass because you won't be breaking down enough of these proteins and you'll be eating and focusing more and building up more proteins. That's the difference. And that's the reason why they mention this in science. I can't bring it up right now.
Also mentioned he ended up taking longer rest periods between his sets, which is another factor that will affect how much volume you need to grow. If you take shorter rest between sets, such as less than 2 minutes, research suggests you'll need to do more sets to get the same amount of growth as you would from taking longer rest.
No, there's no growth whether you're taking a rest or not. Well, it depends. Yeah, I guess more glycogen is loading in the muscle. If you don't rest so much, you'll have more chances of loading more glycogen. I don't know, maybe, possibly. I think he's just making this stuff.
And unfortunately, the research I covered earlier that helped us come up with that 10 to 20 set range used studies where the rest periods differed. Some studies use shorter rests, whereas other studies use longer rests. So if you usually take longer rest periods, I personally recommend at least 2 minutes between most of your sets. It's likely that the lower end of this 10 to 20 range would be best, whereas the higher end of this range would likely be necessary if you mostly use shorter rest periods. But this also depends on the next factor, how you count.
How you count sets? Okay.
Your sets. So remember how in the meta-analysis we covered earlier, none of the muscle.
Meta-analysis. Okay. I don't even know what they were eating. Food is very important to build muscles, not weights.
Muscles responded better to really high volumes, except for the triceps. Well, it's important to consider how they count.
Yeah, they got more glycogen into the muscles, so it created more artificial muscle growth.
Of their sets. Generally, researchers still count muscles that are indirectly worked with an exercise as one full set for that muscle. So for example, during the bench press, they'll count.
In the meta-analysis, they're not interested in anything. They're just interested in how much growth you're getting and depending on what you're eating doing these sets. And it's really dependent on the food and the sets. They know that you'll get more muscle growth, sarcoplasmic muscle growth. Did they mention that in the meta-analysis? Did they mention the difference between sarcoplasmic muscle growth and myofibrillar, this fiber growth? Yeah, did they mention that? Or myofibrillar growth or fiber growth or sarcoplasmic growth? Which one is it?
that as one set for the chest and also one set for the triceps. Now, whether or not this should truly count as one set for the secondary muscle is up for debate.
You know, the thing about Jeremy Ethier, he looks the same like he did when he started this channel. He looks the same. If anything, he looks kind of aged. He looks like he got older really fast.
But it does affect the volume recommendations. For example, even though the study showed that triceps responded really well to 20 plus sets per week, if you look at the average person's workout routine, this would only be about...
You know, this is a really fancy site and everything, but you don't need all this to learn all this. No wonder why he has 5.93. He's practically 6 million subscribers. He's catching up to Athlean X. Oh my God, Athlean X is like over 10 million. But Athlean X has been on a lot longer. Jeremy Ethier a lot shorter, really short, and he's already up at 6. It's crazy. He's catching up because fancy little this fancy editing and stuff, showing all these things. You all love this. It's fake stuff.
6 direct sets for triceps if you also...
But I can tell you, people are chasing a pipe dream doing this. You're chasing a pipe dream, man.
Counted all the pressing movements they're already doing. Now the front, side, and rear delts, as well as the biceps, probably fall under this category as well. Unless you want to prioritize them, they don't need quite as many direct sets because of how often they're indirectly worked. This also applies for regions within a muscle. The chest, for example, doesn't need 10 sets each for the upper, middle, and lower portions. Rather, the chest in general would require around 10 weekly sets, and you'd ideally split those sets up by using exercises that emphasize the different regions. And I also think this discrepancy in how people count their sets is why high-intensity training, where you usually do just one set per exercise,
Yeah, that's like running down the street, you know. High intensity, running down the street. Gonna build a muscle by running down the street?
can work and has worked for many people. You see, in the
And then he shows a bunch of people on artificial hormones, steroids creating fake muscles. Great.
research we covered, subjects would stop each set once they reach failure or close enough to it. But Dorian Yates...
Are these subjects on steroids? He shows steroid people. Why don't you show normal people? No normal person is going to look like that. See what I mean? This is ridiculous. They could come close, but they're not going to look like that.
Six-time Mr. Olympia, who has popularized high-intensity training, describes his set as one all-out set extended beyond failure with force reps, rest...
None of this training by these fake bodybuilders on artificial hormones creating artificial muscles will work for natural people whatsoever, okay?
Pause reps or drop set reps. A set is properly finished only when additional movement is...
A set is going to build a muscle. Man, I told you, it's either going to help load more glycogen into the muscle, you keep doing that, or protein synthesis needs to exceed that breakdown to increase that mass, but that mass can only get so big. And
utterly impossible.
And when you reach that limit, you need something to get going more, to exceed that limit. You need something specific. It's called myonuclei because they synthesize protein. Without getting more of those nuclei, you can't exceed that limit. It's complicated.
Possible. So as you can imagine, one set performed in this fashion.
And the satellite cell does not donate its nuclei so easy to that domain. There's got to be something very specific done to the muscle for it to add these nuclei.
Very likely be the same time under tension and stimulus that 2 to 3 normal sets would provide. Lastly, and probably most importantly, not everyone should be doing what's optimal. Although somewhere within the 10 to 20 weekly set range is probably what will maximize growth, you'd be surprised with just how little volume you need to...
Yeah, I don't see anybody growing in the gym. They're doing that all the time. Sometimes I take months off, I come back to the gym, they look exactly the same. Why is that? And they're doing the same stuff over and over again. They all look the same. I didn't see them grow anything or change or body change. They look all the same to me when I walk back in there 5 months, 6 months later into a gym sometimes. How come they're not changing, Jeremy? They're doing all this work. What's going on? Vegetarian diet?
Still get really great results. 10 sets doesn't give you double the growth as...
I know, because they're on the breatharian diet. That's why they're gaining all this. Yeah.
5 sets. Each additional set you do only gets you marginally better gains. And if we look back at
They're not growing because they're not on the breatharian diet. I made a mistake. The reason why nobody's growing is because they're not on the breatharian diet. they need to go on the breatharian diet in order to build these muscles by lifting this metal off.
2017 meta-analysis we covered earlier, even though 10 or more weekly sets led to the most growth, 5 to 9 weekly sets still gave about 80% of the max growth.
Because they were on the breatharian diet. And when people are not on that, they're not maximizing their growth by lifting these weights.
So for example, for chest, this could be as little as 3 sets of bench and 3 sets of flies every week, which could pretty much cut your workout times in half. In fact, in some cases...
Again, they never said what these people were eating and how much they were eating. See what I mean?
Even in trained individuals, just 3 sets per muscle per week has been shown to build some muscle. So, if you're having trouble...
Really? So it had nothing to do with what they were eating. Just lifting away. Literally, you could just walk around and breathe air and just go like this and you've got this muscle. It's amazing. This is a miracle.
Just being consistent in the first place.
This guy's a genius. It's a miracle, man. See, he just told you the secret. You just got to lift these weights a couple times and muscles are gonna magically build.
Don't chase optimal.
They're not gonna break muscle down. They're gonna build muscles.
What you can and really...
See, lifting weights are not gonna break down the muscle. They're gonna build muscle. And especially more on a breatharian diet, bro.
You can still get great results with far less than you think. And at the end of the video, I am going to provide you guys with a...
See, you're going to grow far less than you think. You're going to grow a lot more. Yeah, man. How's that working for all you out there, eh? How's that working for all you natties, natural people? Breatharian diets and sets and everything, trying to lift and build this muscle stuff, huh? Yeah. It's not going to break down muscle, right? It's going to build muscle. It's not going to be lifting weights don't break down proteins or even damage muscles. They build muscles in a gym. I didn't know that, man. I had no clue. I got to shut my channel down. I guess I'm not an expert anymore. I didn't know anything. I personally always thought that lifting weights broke down proteins if you're in an adapted state, and if you're unadapted, it causes this damage to muscle fibers, and that causes more regrowth. And so I thought that protein synthesis needs to exceed that breakdown in order to gain that mass and muscle, to build that muscle. But I'm wrong. I guess you can literally live off air and lift these weights, and the weights are magically going to build muscles. This is insane. But I didn't know that. And look, he's got a whole program here. Minimalist, moderate volume, high volume. And this is great, man.
Free, minimalist, and optimal workout routine you can use with all the science and the sets taken care of for you. But first, we need to discuss how exactly to start applying all the research we've covered. First off, I'd recommend...
apply all this research that you have covered, Jeremy?
I recommend starting off at the low end of the 10 to 20 weekly set range, especially if you're a beginner. You don't want to do higher volumes than your body can currently handle. 10 weekly sets for chest, for example, could look like this if you trained all your muscles twice a week, which is generally how I'd recommend splitting your volume up.
So I got to do my chest twice a week. So I got to come in and break down proteins twice a week? Or sorry, I made a mistake. I come in twice a week and it's going to magically build up these proteins by lifting this weight. It's going to build up these proteins. It's not going to break down proteins, right? And shrink me.
Now, even if you're past the beginner stage, dial in your form, make sure you're pushing hard enough, take longer rest periods, and it's very likely you'll start seeing better results despite doing far less.
Or do I have to eat a lot of glycogen to pretend and load this as an energy source in the muscle? Because now that I'm doing all this exertion, all this work, I just load more glycogen and get the phony muscles? Okay.
Than you were before. But eventually, as you get...
It could be exhausting going to failure, right? You need to load this glycogen because you're exhausted now. You're going to failure to fatigue.
More experience, you may reach a point where your gains have completely stalled and your body is actually ready for...
I wonder why that is. And what are these gains? How much are you really gaining? You're showing a nice graph there. What are you gaining? Like you gained 1 pound that whole time? What is it? 1 pound, 2 pounds, 1 pound. What exactly did you gain doing that? How did you gain that though? I don't know. I don't understand this.
More volume. But before you make any changes, I'd recommend...
Or is he just making this up?
Going through this flowchart from the Muscle and Strength Pyramids book written by researcher Eric Helms. For example, if you're sleeping well, pushing hard with good form, and eating enough, yet
that Helms guy, wow, he's a genius too, man. Yeah.
You're still not seeing gains, then you might actually need more volume. In this case, days, add about 2 more weekly sets.
All right, I'm out of here, bro. This is enough of this stuff. I got to answer a call. See you in the next one. Ciao.